We are now streaming. Welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adventure on So Many Levels. We're going to play some Dungeons and Dragons.
Yay!
So for the last little while, we have been playing Root, the role-playing game, but we recently completed our campaign of that. All of those sessions, though, are still available. You can check those out in video or audio format. But tonight, we're beginning a brand new campaign. We're returning to Dungeons and Dragons. We are going to be starting off with the brand new Wizards of the Coast book, Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. And if you're listening to me right now, then either you're hearing the podcast later or you're seeing the stream, at which point the title is great big on the screen, so you can probably figure it out. So, what are we going to be doing tonight? Well, this is going to be a session 0 where we are going to finalize everybody's characters, do some introductory stuff, figure out a little bit how our characters know each other, and then if we get far enough along, we're going to go ahead and roll into the first adventure. So, I am Christiana Ellis, and I'm going to be the dungeon master for this campaign. Our players tonight, Paul Weimer.
Hi.
Jason Banks.
Hello, guys. Oh, sorry, wrong game.
Clem lives on. I would love to hear you still do that voice for the new character. We'll see.
That'll work great for a herring gun. That's great.
Lee Burdett.
Hello.
David Archambault.
Hi.
And Nobilis Reed.
Hello, everyone.
All right. So, where do we stand right now? Well, everybody has kind of gotten started putting their characters together, and I think some of you are a little further along than others. We're still finalizing some of those things. Got to pick all those level 1 spells and such. But we're also going to want to talk a little bit about your character backstories. So specifically, the questions that we would like to answer before we begin the first adventure is, where were they before they came to the Radiant Citadel? How did they come to the Radiant Citadel? How did your characters come to know one another? And what is the context for how you will, as a group, begin this first adventure? Those are the things that we would like to know before we start the game proper. But the other things that we're going to do is talk a little bit about what this campaign is, what this book is, and talk a little bit about what is the Radiant Citadel? Where is the Radiant Citadel? Why is the Radiant Citadel? And so, and also just talk a little bit about, other session 0 sorts of things. So, with all that said, let's jump right in, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
So, just to get us started, how about we just go down the line and have everyone give 3 sentences max on who you see your character as so far. It doesn't have to be everything. Like I said, this is quick, high level. What have you got so far? Paul?
I am intending to play a Githzerai bard. His name is Xenophon. He's originally from the Plane of Limbo.
Uh-huh. And so Githzerai, if people aren't familiar, are kind of they're often green-skinned, kind of pointy-eared. They're a bit alien to the material plane seeming sometimes, but we'll see how that plays out here. Did you say what you said? Bard?
Yep.
Okay, great.
My first bard since first edition. So this is gonna be fun, listeners. Also, that makes me the face, I think.
Sure. And the name is Xenophon.
Xenophon, Zenophon. I combined Zeno and Xenophon and got Xenophon.
Aha. Xenophon. Okay. What about you, Jason?
Exel is a Herringon gate warden. He actually came to the Citadel by accident and ended up protecting a gate to a very nasty place. And over the time that he's done so, it has slowly corrupted his appearance. He still looks like a rabbit. It's just not a very nice looking rabbit.
Oh boy.
And in direct counterpoint to that,
Sure. Go ahead.
we have my character whose name is Flounce. In my head, she also came to the Radiant Citadel by accident, possibly by tripping over a tree root, falling down a ravine, and then just plonking on her butt in the middle of a fountain in the middle of the town square. I am not attached to that origin story, but as you do. Flounce's superpower is extreme fluff.
All right, David.
Okay. I am playing Dianok, a wood elf wizard who came to the Radiant Citadel because they found something curious and investigated it and wound up here.
Okay. And
Also they couldn't stay where they were.
okay. Well, we'll get into more of that in a moment. But last but not least, Nobilis.
Kanthan is a human from one of the places that has regular contact with the Citadel. He used to work in the local equivalent of a soup kitchen, a place that fed poor people.
Mhm.
But at least in his particular neighborhood, conditions improved to the point where it wasn't really needed anymore. And he found himself somewhat at loose ends, and someone said, "Oh, you should go to the Radiant Citadel." So he left. He's a fighter. He's his skills are, he often was keeping order in this place. Something of a bouncer, but he's also knows how to cook, and his hand axes are in the shape of cleavers. So
Nice. So, one of the things that stood out to me there in just hearing the preliminary descriptions is certainly Herringon is a race that a lot of people might not be familiar with. They are essentially rabbit people, which is great. And because we have two of them, and yet they are very different characters, it just raises the question. Can't help but to raise the question, do Exel and Flounce know each other? There's no reason that they have to, but it's just a question of whether you think they do or not. They could
I'm
have.
open to both options because it's interesting either way. Because if they do know each other, then it would make sense that Flounce might have been looking for Exel, and that's how she ended up in the Radiant Citadel.
Could be. Like maybe they knew each other from before, but their lives have taken very different paths.
Yes.
Until now when they are coming back together.
and fell down a rabbit hole.
Yep. Alice in Wonderland. At this point, I don't know what Flounce's personality is like. She is also a fighter, but I want to say that she kind of made off with Daddy's weapons to go find herself, and that's why she has this massive glaive on her back. She can use the longsword, but she's just kind of hauling this 6-foot glaive on her back everywhere she goes. She's not big enough to use it. And unfortunately, it tends to get stuck in things or trip her up, and it's not the most graceful rabbit ever.
Well, so for that matter, one of the things that's interesting about the Harengon race in the book is that you are able to choose whether they are small or medium sized, and you've chosen small. What about you, Axel? Are you medium?
Yes, Excel's medium, and I do like the idea that because the paths have diverged so much that they do know each other, and it could be something as similar. Because one of the cool things I like about the Herringon race is that they're originated from the Feywild, right? So like, there's a lot of fantastical elements within that place, and but they don't talk a lot about like the structure or like the society within it. So they could have been like in, I don't know, like bunny rabbit rearing school, and you know maybe Flounce was very clumsy and tripped down that said rabbit hole, and he went looking and he got lost and ended up in the Radiant Citadel. It's it's a pretty cool thing, and plus with the versatility of size, like that could also help like within their ranks like decide what they kind of want to do, which I think is interesting because Flounce ran off with Dad's weapons because Flounce is tiny. They don't expect Flounce to be angry and murderous.
You know me well.
So we're going to be exploring all of that a little bit more, but so let's just briefly touch base here on when we're talking here about the Radiant Citadel. It's in the title, where our characters are all going to be starting there. But where is this place, right? So I'm going to read a little bit of some of the stuff here from the book. In the heart of the ethereal plane lies an ancient and mysterious city called the Radiant Citadel. Through tradition, cooperation, and ancestral magic, 15 civilizations are bound to this wondrous site. Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel is an anthology of exciting adventures that explore the cultures and myths of these realms. And so the basic idea here is that the Radiant Citadel, the ethereal plane, is kind of like it's an alternate parallel dimension that kind of overlaps with our own, but also has its own depths, which can be plumbed. And in particular, deep within the ethereal plane, there is essentially a city, which I'm going to put up now on our screen here. If it will take a moment to load. There we go. Okay. So, this is the Radiant Citadel. And as you can see, so there is an enormous, like mountain-sized diamond called the Auroral Diamond. And the whole city is kind of clustered around it. In fact, actually, there's another handout. Let me find that. You know what? Some of these handouts are not. I didn't prepare this as effectively as I could have in terms of having this handout that I wanted to show everyone ready to hand here. But there is essentially, this is what we can see on the map here is a little bit tiered, like the whole thing is got sort of different levels that are all clustered around this enormous diamond, and this whole location is just floating in the ethereal mists, and yet it has floating around it, almost like orbiting planets, these strange crystalline structures known as the Concord Jewels. Those things, they look like big crystals, but what they actually are is magical vehicles that can travel back and forth from the Radiant Citadel to specific locations where they are bound to. And the 15 civilizations mentioned in that introductory paragraph, each one has its own Concord Jewel. Also relevant is the fact that this place apparently in the ancient past had 12 more connected civilizations, but nobody knows where those were anymore. They are lost, but perhaps solving the mystery of where they are or which ones those were could be something that could eventually come up, but as it is right now, it's a mystery. But so each of these 15 locations on the material plane has its own Concord Jewel that goes back and forth. And because it's essentially an instantaneous transportation, as long as you are there when the Concord Jewel is making the trip, this gives the opportunity for these 15 civilizations, which are otherwise very far flung, to have a lot of trade, right? And then a lot of people also have just come to make a home here on the Radiant Citadel. And so there are a couple of locations here of note. One is hang on, let me pull up some details here. And Roll20 is cooperating with me very nicely by taking a long time to load everything. It's all right, though. So there is the Court of Whispers, which is here. I'm just realizing that a lot of these labels are not going to be showing to our players right now. The Court of Whispers is the where the denizens of the Court of Whispers barter for current knowledge, and basically this is where all sorts of intelligence changes hands, and news and gossip and so on. But also the speakers for the ancestors, who are the leaders of the Radiant Citadel, employ freelancers from the Court of Whispers to keep track of major concerns in their various people's homelands. So who are the leaders of the Radiant Citadel, the speakers for the ancestors? Well, there's one of them for each of the connected civilizations, and they basically work as a team. They have specific term, at which point there's a whole thing about how they are chosen to be one of the speakers for the ancestors and how they can stay doing that. And maybe we'll get into it, but it's a longer story than I'm going to cover right now. But regardless, the speakers for the ancestors are the leaders here. And so then there's also the House of Convalescence, which is right here. And that's basically it's a bit like a hospital. And one of the things that is unique about this location is the fact that there is a mountain-sized diamond available. And so when it comes to doing healing spells, a lot of healing spells, powerful healing spells, require diamond dust components, which can be very expensive, but not if you are in the House of Convalescence. Of Convalescence it focuses the life-giving energies of the auroral diamond, allowing for incredible feats of healing magic. It is an oasis for the sick, the injured, and the desperate. It also draws clerics and healers of many traditions, and in particular, any healing spell that would normally require a diamond component does not require it if it is performed in the House of Convalescence. There is the Palace of Exile, which is right there. Bing. And this is the place where refugees are housed. And so in particular, it's named not because people are necessarily exiled who are there, but because it's named in honor of the founding leader, who was named Socorro the Exile. And he was a refugee of a war in the land of Sansitlan, which is one of the lands that we'll be visiting in this campaign. And so he decided to create a place where refugees could go and have a place to heal and get on their feet. So it is actually a gorgeous, elaborate palace. It is not just like a bunch of tents. It is a place where there's spacious living quarters with adjoining gardens and recovery centers where refugees are cared for physically, mentally, and emotionally as they make the transition to either living in the Radiant Citadel permanently or relocating to a new land. There is also the Preserve of the Ancestors, which is not shown on the map, only the entrance here. And what this is a magical space inside the diamond, where it's essentially an enormous nature preserve, and it is used in many cases by there's a sect of druids that will bring injured animals to be healed and rehabilitated, or a place for animals that are there's no longer a safe habitat for them where they were, can live there. And it's ruled over by a bunch of spirits, and there's a spirit from each of these connected lands that has what are they called? I've lost the connection. So there are spirits that are, come from each of these connected lands, and these spirits take the form of gemstones, which collectively will form into the shapes of various animals, and those animals become the sorry, I'm trying to organize this. The Roll20 is laid out a little bit differently than the D&D Beyond one, which I used to prep from. So, yeah, so it is the incarnates from the that I'm talking about here. So the keepers of vast wisdom from distant lands. The incarnates are collections of spirits bound within gemstones. Each of an incarnate's component gemstones holds a spirit from the same land on the material plane. Most incarnates are small, no more than a handful of gems, but the Dawn incarnates are the biggest ones, and they know everything that transpires in the preserve of the ancestors, and they are ultimately the ones who are kind of keepers of the magic of the whole place, and it's actually them that choose who becomes a speaker for the ancestors, who are the mortal leaders of the place. And as mentioned, let's see, I'm trying to so in some cases, you might need to look at my screen here to see some of these images, because I was going to try to show these handouts, but you can see here's one image in this area where there is the Dawn incarnate here of the amethyst tiger, who is Dawn incarnate of Unido, and then there's you've got a scorpion here, and then all of the 15 lands have their own. Mm-hmm. And then, so those are some of the main locations in this place that we're going to be existing in. But in particular, one of the things that's notable, I think, about the Radiant Citadel is that compared to a lot of D&D settings, it's a bit more utopian, say, where it's in the sense that although it is, relatively speaking, pretty small, compared to other, like civilizations. It is a smallish, even for a, compared to what a city could be in the material plane, but it is one where these 15 different cultures are all coexisting together peacefully. It is a place where everyone who lives here is entitled to a basic income, where they are, able to, manage food and shelter. But it's also a place where, it basically, it's intended to be this collection, this place where all these different cultures can kind of meet and know one another. So that's the Radiant Citadel. And the adventures that we are going to be playing through mostly don't take place on the Radiant Citadel. They take place, each one, in one of these 15 different locations that are connected. Mm-hmm. So on that basis, I didn't go into all the different, there's a couple more places that are located on here. The Trade Discal, there's the diamond itself has a label that, and then there's the Passage of Respite. Let's see, what was that one? That one, let's see if I can find where that is. But, there is also one sort of a looming worry, is that there is something called the Keening Gloom, which is just beyond the light of the Radiant Citadel rages the Keening Gloom, a massive ethereal cyclone. Nothing that enters the cyclone is seen again. And when explorers rediscovered the Citadel, the Keening Gloom hungrily circled the city. Its endless howls struck terror in their hearts and engulfed several adventurers. After the heroes entered the Citadel and reawakened its power, the cyclone was driven back. But in times of turmoil within the Citadel, the cyclone ominously draws closer. Oh, the one last detail that I'll mention about this diamond that I didn't before is that it glows with colors. And in fact, it changes colors at irregular intervals based on criteria that nobody is quite sure of. Some people think that every time it turns into a new color, which it seems to always have some sort of a new color, but some people speculate that when it becomes a new color, it's because a civilization has been born somewhere in the multiverse. And some people likewise think that after many other colors have been shown and then it shows that same first color again, it's because that civilization is no longer around. Oh, here.
I hope it's got a really big Crayola box.
Well, it
Yes.
it theoretically got an infinite number of possible possible things that it could show.
Does it
Yeah.
have
Okay, it's 700
Yeah, if it can do
nanometers.
plaid, then we'll know it's talking about us.
Yeah.
Ah!
So let's see if I can actually get it to show this on this screen here. Shoot. Because my, let's see, Roll20 is got this thing where once you have shown something and then set it out to a different window and then close it, it doesn't want to load it again so that I can't put it on this screen. But that's all right. There's plenty of time for all of that. So that is the place that we're talking about. So, excuse me. Let's talk a little bit about how people might get to the Citadel, right? So there are these Concord Jewels, right? Where if you were in one of those locations that is connected by a Concord Jewel, you might happen across it and be welcomed aboard. It's theoretically possible that you could have been in the vicinity of one of the 12 lost ones and discover that one. It's also possible that you could have, just by floating through the ethereal plane, have happened across the Radiant Citadel in that way.
Well, how would you get in past the howling storm?
So the Howling Storm is not like, it doesn't encompass it. It's nearby.
Oh, okay.
It's nearby.
Okay.
So the worry is that it could move in, but it doesn't surround it.
Oh, okay. It's not a barrier.
Right.
It's out there.
The worry is that it could come in and swallow the Radiant Citadel, but it's not currently all the way around it.
Okay.
I imagine before it was rediscovered and the power was awoken, it was a lot more barrier-like.
Well, it could be. It does, we don't really know because it was a long time ago. So the current known history of this place is that there were a group of adventurers led by a dragon named Shole, who is actually still one of the current speakers for the ancestors, who discovered this place searching for something that they had heard rumors of. And what they found was the Radiant Citadel having had been constructed sometime in the past and then abandoned for unknown reasons. And so they decided to reactivate it and reawaken it. And so everyone who is here now has come since that happened, but it's known that this place must have existed much more distantly in the past and then was abandoned at some point for reasons unknown. And that's why there are, they know that there's 12 more Concord Jewels theoretically out there, but they don't know where they would go. So the other piece of what we've got in this adventure is not just the Radiant Citadel itself, but the 15 different places that are connected to it, right? And so it is not necessary that any characters be from one of those places, but it is certainly one of the options that you could take, right? And I know that Nobilis has, for Canthan, already chosen one. And by fun coincidence, it happens to be the one where our first adventure will take place. So I think what we could talk about is a little bit about what each of those places is like, and you and people could kind of try to decide if they want to hear a little bit more about any of those individual places, and we could learn a bit more about them. So you could maybe decide if though that's one of the places that you would like your characters to be from. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
All right, so let me see if I can find that table that I was looking at earlier. There's a lot of great stuff here in the. You know what? Let's pull it up through here. Because as I mentioned, there's 15 of them, and each of the adventures takes place in one. But I know that there was a table that had kind of just a high level covering each location. But while I'm looking that up, does anybody have any questions or things that you're kind of thinking about or that you want to sort of run through?
I know I and somebody else's character is an outer plains warden. Am I right about that? Or am I the only one who's from the outer plains?
Well, so I think Jason's character Exel was going to be a gate warden. We're using some unearthed arcana backgrounds and feats, but so I think that's probably what you were thinking of there.
Yeah. I was trying to figure out how to get from there to here in a rational manner, other than like wandering the multiverse, which is possible for my character, but I was looking to see if there's a more elegant solution to the problem.
Well, one of the things that came to mind for me was that a place like the Radiant Citadel wouldn't just be popular with the cultures that get there via the Concord Jewels.
Right.
Other people would establish planar contact with them. They couldn't have these, giant cargo ships going back and forth, but there'd be other people who go there too for various reasons. And so you don't have to be able to get there on your own to be able to get there. So you don't have to be from one of the civilizations that's got the Concord Jewels.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Your character can be from anywhere. They don't have to be one of those places. As I mentioned, there's several different ways you could have found your way here.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that any high magic civilization that finds out about the Radiant Citadel, there'd be people who would set up gateways to get there too.
Yeah, so it would just take someone, knowing about it. Or for that matter, like anyone who is in the ethereal plane exploring the deep ethereal could just find it.
Yeah.
Happened before.
Perhaps Xenophon has has contact with the wizard with the gate spell.
Oh.
And
David, you're a genius. Thank you. That makes okay. That makes perfect sense on what. Okay.
So
one thing that I'll touch on here that I kind of meant to get to a little bit before, and we'll want to talk a little bit more about this before we begin properly too, is just, because we're doing session 0 stuff, some of this, we're going to talk a little bit about like player safety type stuff, those sorts of things. But one of the things that I also really like in this book is a section called Thoughtful Introductions. And I'll kind of read through this in a moment, but just to basically cover it here, one of the things that I think is really exciting about this book is that they have drawn upon the experience and talent of a very diverse group of writers to help with developing all of these different adventurers and to try to have a lot of these lands be inspired by real cultures without necessarily intending to be exactly one for one, right? So we're just drawing on a lot of different sort of cultural backgrounds for things in this adventure. And I think that's great, but it also means that it's something that we should probably, be aware of and a little bit sensitive to, that it's possible in the interest of trying to explore these different cultures to accidentally tread on some toes. So in the interest of trying to avoid that as much as we can, let me read this thoughtful introductions section. While exploring the locations introduced through these adventures, be thoughtful about how you roleplay and describe groups of people. Consider the guidance here when running adventures. And like a lot of this is for me, but I think it's good advice broadly anyway. So first is broad descriptions. Describe everyone's features, not just those whose features are different from your own. Detail, not stereotypes. When describing a character's appearance, strive to detail more than just one thing and avoid descriptions based on stereotypes. The more you can say about body type, hairstyle and texture, skin tone, clothes, accessories, and the like, the more dimension a character has. As some societies strongly associate ethnicity with skin color, take extra care when describing characters' skin colors. Consider a range of literal descriptions such as copper, umber, onyx, or ebony, with modifiers such as rich, lustrous, warm, or cool. And then gradual explorations. You don't have to reveal a setting's entire culture at once. Skip details that aren't immediately relevant to characters and reveal details as they arise. A scene in a tavern presents opportunities to introduce distinct foods, while a market trip is a great time to note varieties of dress. Highlight what's familiar. Highlight what's familiar in a culture and how it's like other locations. This can help characters ground their experiences and better understand where they're visiting. And then online and streamed games. Just as you don't have to breathe fire in real life to play a Dragonborn in D&D, you don't need to be from the cultures that inspired the adventures in this book to play characters from them. However, take care to portray characters as three-dimensional people with relatable desires and fears. One person's culture isn't another's costume. If you dress up, simple outfits are best. Avoid leaning into stereotypes or clothing with real-world religious significance. Instead, focus on everyday wear from the cultures you're exploring. Don't change your skin color, alter your features, or emulate hairstyles you wouldn't normally have to appear as like a different real-world ethnicity. Similarly, avoid mocking real-world accents in your roleplay. Now, I've been playing with all of you for long enough that I don't think that those are likely to be a problem, but I think it's good advice generally and worth talking through a little bit. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts about that?
Nope.
It seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems pretty logical and common sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you'd hope, but it's you know.
Yeah.
You'd like to think, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the truth is too that it's always possible. Like we don't always know the things that we don't know, right? And so sometimes, someone can be entirely well-meaning and just stumble on something out of just ignorance because they're just not aware. And so we should try to be aware of places where our own experience might have gaps, and just try to be conscious of these things. Okay. I'm not finding the table that I thought I saw earlier, which seemed to just have a quick high-level description of each location. However, one of the things that the book does have is what's known as a gazetteer for each location. And what that does is it has a lot of the details that someone from that location would know about their place. And each of those has kind of a high-level thing. So is anyone interested in choosing one of those 15 locations who hasn't already had a chance to kind of think about that a little bit? I know that's like a big question.
Well, I mean, I've already chosen, so
Sure.
Yeah.
Where are the 15 located? Because I was reading through the stuff you sent about Radiant Citadel, and I didn't see.
Yeah. So that first chapter I had linked was just about the Radiant Citadel itself. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other locations. So the first one that is the one that Nobilis has already chosen for Canthan is known as. So the spelling is Siabsungkoh in the pronunciation guide in the book. Handily provided is Sabsunko. And that location Amid a vivid patchwork of rural farms and dense mountain jungles stands the bustling, unforgettable Dinsing Night Market, the heart of the valley of Sapsumko. This regional market attracts visitors from distant lands with delicious foods, rare treasures, and all manner of unpredictable fortunes. Tourists nicknamed this ever-changing district the Dancing Night Market due to its festive atmosphere and the colorful displays of magical lights that illuminate vendors' wares. Beyond Subsumco's regional market district, lush jungles are home to rare plants and animals, and like there's more, but like I can't read
Yep.
5 paragraphs worth for 15 locations. That would
No.
take forever. But so that is that first place. So and then kind of how do you feel? I can kind of just do that level of description sort of for each of them, and you guys just shout out if any of those sounds interesting and you want to know a little bit more about it. The next one location is called God's Breath. And generations ago, a land was plundered by enemies whose names are lost to time. 5 gods came together to save as many of the land's beleaguered inhabitants as they could by taking them to a new home. Those the gods saved named their new land God's Breath in honor of the deities who brought them across a vast sea to new life. These inhabitants banded together to build strong communities and protect themselves from danger. From one generation to the next, they share stories of their past, of the distant lands of their ancestors, and of the unfulfilled promise of reunion with ancestors left behind in a lost land. And at the risk of, yeah, you know what? I don't have that handy. I was just going to say, like, I found a thing that had interviews with each of the writers, and it talked a little bit about, like, what real world sort of location or culture sort of inspired each of them, but I'm not going to try to remember all of those, and I'm not going to look it up either. But so that's God's Breath.
I think that was in the table and stuff that you were talking about was in the promotional.
It might have been, but I know I saw another one somewhere and I can't find it, but it's moot now. I don't think it's okay. But so the next is Sansitlan, and this was one of the ones that I mentioned previously. It came up during the history for the House of Exile. But so the stone and iron city of Sansitlan stands at a confluence of ley lines where the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead is thin. It's a place suffused with magic where citizens commune with the dead in joyful festivals, and industrious minds create wonders of magic and technology. Despite Sansitlan's rich culture and magical marvels, economic inequality is stark between the majority of its inhabitants and the wealthy landowners and technocrats who control the land's resources. These elites reap the rewards of progress with little regard to those left behind. As harsh as life can be for those in the city, the borderlands are harsher still. There, every day is a struggle to survive in the face of poverty, banditry, and drought. And next is Zinda. Zinda is a city of spiraling marble towers and turrets, of universities and guild halls, and of specialty shops lining paved streets. Far below the balconies, the court of flowers and the pier ring with the merry laughter and the songs of laborers. Year-round, Zinda's plazas and parlors are full of academics, merchants, and pilgrims, but for 10 days in the summer, the March of Vice draws even larger crowds as the city celebrates the local wine trade. So the March of Vice is very clearly sort of Mardi Gras inspired there.
Yeah.
So one of the things too that just occurred to me is that I think 3 of our 5 characters are not necessarily likely to be from any of these places, which is not to say we can't decide that that's where your character was before they came to the Radiant Citadel, right? But and then one of the other 2 has already decided where they're from. So I guess I want to just, before we spend a lot of time on this, is this something you want to, do you want me to go through this for all of them? Because we'll meet each of these locations as we go to the adventures, but if this is helpful, let me know. If not, then we can move on to something else.
As I've said, not necessary for me.
Not necessary. It's interesting, but not necessary. I'm finding these cultures fascinating, but we're going to engage with.
Yeah,
these
we're
in the
gonna
game
be
anyway.
there
Yeah,
anyway,
we're gonna
so,
get
yeah.
we're gonna get to these places.
Well,
So-
right. So the hope with this was if anybody kind of felt like they wanted to be from one of these places, but let me know if you've if you're kind of feeling like you already know where you want it to be, or you know that you don't want it to be one of these because you have some other idea, then let's not spend too much time on that because all these places are great, but we're gonna go to them when we go to the adventures.
Okay.
Right. Right. I think I'm pretty sure that Flounce is just straight up from the Feywild.
Okay.
So she doesn't have to be from the particular place in the
Yeah.
Feywild that we're going to be going
Well,
to. But
related to that, there is one of the adventures that is has Feywild influence as part of the adventure that we go on. So I could read you just the high level for that location, because it's possible that you could have come to the Radiant Citadel through that place from the Feywild.
okay.
Right?
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at before, wondering about outer plane influences to
Sure.
figure out a way to get there.
Uh,
But this makes sense for Lee.
Yeah. So Atagua, much of Atagua consists of grasslands, wetlands, and narrow stretches of tropical forests bordering the Holoro River. Hang on, I'm not sure. Where? Okay, there we go. Sorry, I lost my place. 2 extreme seasons each year of intense rain and dusty drought have shaped this land and blessed its people with resilience. They live, work, and tell stories in villages built on platforms or in sprawling hacienda estates surrounded by sugarcane fields or cacao orchards. Though their villages may be separated by many miles, Otagoans meet each other in their dreams due to their connections between this land and a mystical mountain in the Feywild.
So yeah, if we take it as read that Flounce stole her dad's armor and weapons and marched off to seek her fortune, then it would make sense that she could have passed through here to get to the Radiant Citadel. Yeah, like I said, I'm willing to. I'm willing to pass on the, trip down and fell through a hole.
Well,
it was just
so I mean, tell me
So,
what
yeah.
you would like it to be, because we can, if you want it to be tripped and fell down a hole and woke up in the Radiant Citadel, that's what we can do. I have no objection
Yeah.
to that. This is all optional stuff that we're doing, where it's just talking about, like, if you feel like you would like to flesh it out with more detail, this is some of what we can do. But so like one way to do it would be that if you're looking for, did we establish that you were looking for Exel, or do we want that to be true?
I don't think we actually established it.
Well, so let's answer that question. So
Okay.
There is no requirement or need for Exel and Flounce to have ever met. Do we want you to have met or known each other?
I mean, I'm fine with that. One of the things you pointed out about the Atagua was the whole fact that they meet one another in their dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of a community of people having that type of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that they know each other per se, but once Flounce got to the Radiant Citadel, that because they were 2 Otaguans, that connection happened because they were there. Like, until another Otaguan showed up, neither of them had it.
Well, so I hesitate there only just because I haven't read that in Adventure in its entirety. I don't know if that's something that only happens in that region, right? I don't know if it's about who they are, but it might be rather the location, like the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, that's just interesting. And if Lee wants Flounce to be looking for him, that's fine. Because not necessarily, like, I was reading with the Citadel, they have kind of a group of warriors that go out and not defend, but they rescue endangered people from different realms, so to speak.
Oh yeah, no, there's a whole bunch of that, and I think we'll get into that soon here. But so I feel like there's still a little bit of wavering between the two of you on this question. I think that let's have it sort of by default be that you didn't know each other before.
Okay.
And if you both want to opt in, then we can do that. But otherwise, it's fine. We don't need. So kind of like I was saying before we started the stream, when a D&D party has two human characters, we don't feel the need to figure out if they knew each other or are they related or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
you can have two Harangon characters without them having to have ever known each other.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah, that kind of makes a little bit more sense because I get this the sense that Exel is older than Flounce is by a lot.
well, how old is Flounce?
Flounce, she is. I would say she is late teens for just about late teens era. She's in the rebellious. She's in her rebellious phase of I'm going to go out and seek my fortune. There's nothing you can do to stop me. So there.
Well, so we could imagine that the slightly more descriptive version of She Fell in a Hole was she left the Feywild behind. Maybe she, on purpose or deliberately, or or accidentally, ended up leaving the Feywild to the material plane, and then ended up coming out near Otagwa, where maybe you encountered the Otagwa Concord Jewel, and that's maybe how you
Yeah. Yeah,
reached.
that makes sense. That
And it
makes
could
sense.
just be that you really like. Do you think Flounce had any intentionality of all of that, or is she really just kind of just following her feet, so to speak?
I think she was just following.
Okay, great. So, by contrast, do you have a sense, Jason, of Exel's own path?
I like the setting of the Otago, especially
Mhm.
because he's a herring dog, and rabbits have, you know, large litters and things of that nature. Um, and I just like that connection between them. And
Mhm.
say he was very young when he slipped into the portal or something and came into the Radiant Citadel, and so let's say that connection to his people only happens there, so he has a very big sense of being alone.
Mhm.
And so he kind of grew up in the Radiant Citadel amongst these people, feeling like always feeling out as an outsider,
Okay.
which would probably play into how he ended up becoming a guard for the plane that he has. And then when it started to infuse him and change him, he even feels more ostracized. But things change. The Citadel seems to be a very vibrant and always ever changing place that, like, he's run into more and more people, and they can't guard those things all the time because it seems like if you do it
Well,
too much.
so here's something that I think we need to definitely establish for Exel is that your character is a warlock, correct?
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
So because he guards a portal to a very bad place, the the way it works, the essence has infused in him and it starts to change him, and it's given him different abilities and skills, and through those abilities and skills, he made a pact um, with an undead, you know, being,
Yeah. So,
and it's that influence, right? And
yeah. So, without you necessarily having to know everything about this entity, right? What do you feel like your character does know about them?
to Exel, they reached out to him with the promise of family, the promise of not being alone anymore. And it felt to Exel as a warm welcome, basically. Like
Mm-hmm.
and to those in charge of the gate wardens, they don't necessarily know that he's made this pact.
Mm-hmm.
But for him, it was the first sign of family, not just work or some sort of role he does within the Radiant Citadel
Mm-hmm.
to make his pay. And from what he has seen from this deity, because he hasn't physically seen the deity, he's not actually
Mm-hmm.
crossed the portal to go there. They seem to be not necessarily benevolent, but okay. Like, it's if someone reached out to him and was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm fine." And they're like, "Are you sure you're okay? Because you look a little upset. We can hang out and do cool stuff. Hey, I'll teach you a trick. I'll teach you a trick. See, I can look. See, I did this thing. Isn't it cool?" And he's like, "That's interesting. I'll teach you how to do it. You just gotta talk with me and hang with me a little bit."
Okay.
And
So,
because he was young when he started this.
right. So I kind of like the idea that maybe you don't actually necessarily know very much about who they are really. What you know is that there's someone who is able to contact you magically and tell you secrets and give you power, and sometimes they ask you to do things for them, but you don't necessarily know their history per se. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Right. Like, and they don't, and because he doesn't have a way to discern their intentions because it's just
Mm-hmm.
a disembodied voice,
Right.
he's not wary of what their true intentions could be, or if they even have an ulterior motive, right?
All right. So, would you like to know anything else about them up front? Or, obviously, it's always an option for you to enter this not knowing and have me just be working my little
Oh,
machinations in the background.
it's surprises are fun
I
in your
figured that.
campaigns. Surprises are fun.
Well, I appreciate that. So I figured that was probably you're going to be your answer. And as far as how you reach the Radiant Citadel, it seems very straightforward to me as a warlock character that your patron told you to go.
Yeah, like, hey, it's okay. Go over here and you'll get closer to me and we can talk more.
So, what about how do you feel about the idea that you had? So, tell me a little bit about what when you chose Gate Warden as the background, and this is one of the Unearthed Arcana new ones. What are you envisioning there? This would have been before you became a warlock, right?
Right.
So, how did that happen? What does that mean for your character?
See, I the way I originally looked at it was that when he, coming to the Radiant Citadel, gosh, and he was pulled into kind of like a core. Like, they don't the Radiant Citadel doesn't have a standing army, but they do have mages and magical people who are for the defense of the Citadel.
Yeah.
And since it's connected to so many different places, not all of them are friendly. And so they bring people up through the ranks to guard these places. And it just so happens that because he's not necessarily from there, they might have thought he was slightly expendable. So they put him in front of said bad door.
Okay. So let me just try to clarify here. Are you saying that before you came to the Radiant Citadel, people from the Radiant Citadel came to where you were and told you to do that, or are you saying you were all you? Are you saying you grew up on the Radiant Citadel?
I'm saying, as saying the disembodied voice of who wanted to become his patron lured him into a way where he would run into these people to be brought
Okay.
into the
Okay.
ranks of the.
Oh, so you're saying the warlock patron element predated the gate warden part.
Right. He hadn't made the pact yet because, let's say, they were too far apart.
Okay. Well,
But
it could, yeah, it could also just be that they were, it started as just a friendly voice in your head, and it didn't have to be powers yet,
yeah,
right?
because it's almost that trope of the fantasy in the fantasy world where the kid wanders off into the woods following a light of some sort, and it turns to be some sort of fey creature. But in this
Sure.
case, it was a disembodied voice.
Okay. So you were drawn to an area. So this is still not on the Radiant Citadel, is that
No.
okay?
And it
But
was
an area where there is a portal to one of the chaos or one of the evil outer planes.
right.
Do we want to
And
decide which one? I could tell you what your choices are.
sure.
All right. So certainly when we're talking about the outer planes, that's where we're talking about like not the ethereal plane, not the elemental planes, but the outer planes like the hells and the abyss and so on. So as far as the evil outer planes, there are plenty to choose from. There is the windswept depths of pandemonium, the infinite layers of the abyss, the Tartarian depths of Carcerai, the gray waste of Hades, the bleak eternity of Gehenna, the nine hells of Bator, the infinite battlefield of Archeron. Those are the evil ones, and those range kind of. The order in which I read them was more chaotic to more lawful. Tell you more about any of those specific ones, but like, are you thinking that it would be like a more chaotic type of evil place, or a more lawful type of evil place, or like more like demons that just want to destroy everything, or more like devils who are gonna make
Dominate.
sinister what?
They want to dominate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But through rules and hierarchies and
Yeah, I would think it'd be one closer to domination. And
okay.
is there one that has something to do with like necromancy or the undead?
I mean, I don't know
They
that it
probably
does.
all could.
Well, they all could, but so for example, Hades, the gray waste of Hades, is the neutral evil place. Like the whole list, they go, it's like north, northwest, north by northwest, etc. But so let's see, Hades. I feel like the layers of Hades. It's a gray land with an ashen sky. It's the destination of many souls that are unclaimed by the gods of the upper planes or the fiendish rulers of the lower planes. I mean, it is the like we could imagine that it is. It is a place. So like for that matter, here's the question. Does Exel think, which is a different question than what's really true, right? Does Exel think that that portal is to where this voice in their head is from? Or is their voice in their head sort of posing as a non-evil?
I would think the voice would be posing as non-evil.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they haven't said that they haven't specified to Exel if that gate will lead to them or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because that might tip their hand, especially if they're trying to lull him into a sense of security with them, and they just and then the people that put him at the gate are like, yeah, that gate leads to evil, domineering, undead deities. You gotta, don't go through that.
Oh, so let me see if I'm following this, and tell me if I'm misinterpreting this. But so it sounds kind of like what you're saying is Exel, innocent little Harangon, just doing his thing, starts being contacted by the mysterious voice, who guides him to the close vicinity of a portal to this evil place. By virtue of him being near this place for a while, he is in some ways affected
You can
by
say
that proximity. But then at some point, people from the Radiant Citadel, perhaps coming to investigate that portal, found you there and said, maybe you shouldn't do that.
yeah, and he ends up being kind of to protect or the gate warden of that, because he's already been kind of infused with that energy.
Mm-hmm.
But you could say that it's like it's matter of fact, it's kind of like a conditioning, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
where let's say that this disembodied voice has ulterior motives of domination and escaping that realm, but he needs a vessel that is prepared for such.
Okay, so what we could imagine then is that for reasons known only to this entity who's contacting you, they put you in proximity of a place that was slowly impacting you and changing you in ways that you don't necessarily fully understand. But then maybe these folks from the Radiant Citadel show up, and that's when this entity that's in contact with you tells you to go with them instead of where you were. What do you think about that?
Yeah, And it's and it's kind of like by sending me with them, I get training, knowledge, and experience that can assist in more
Growing your
completion.
power, to
Yeah,
make you a more powerful ally of this entity. So
indeed.
here's a big. I think all of that makes sense as far as uh, a general outline. Um, do you and you're feeling like perhaps was this portal in or near Otagua? Is that what you're feeling?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Um, one last question before we'll move on to someone else for a moment. It's so it sounds like you don't know who they really are, but how do you address this entity? Like, what do you call them?
Ooh, that's a good question.
You can think about it a little bit if you don't have something right away.
Right. I will, and I have an idea where I'm going to find it. But give me a moment.
Oh,
You
sure,
can go
sure.
to someone else.
So, well, how about that? As while you think about that, let's jump over to Paul. So, Xenophon is a Githzerai. Tell us a little bit like about that and what sort of a backstory you have in mind so far.
The backstory I have in mind for Xenophon is that he's a Githzerai from a community in Limbo called Mount Athos. It's a monastery on the borders of Limbo and Asgard, which is the next plane over. And I've envisioned this monastery as a place where reckless adventurers from Asgard go into Limbo because they really are bored and don't want to just regular die day of day. They want a real challenge, and so they limp back to the monastery to get healed up and get nagged at by the Githzerai for the error of their ways. So he's grown up here, hearing all these stories, seeing all these adventures come through again and again, like waves going to Limbo. Not all of them coming back from Limbo, and basically that's been his life for the first few decades of his life. He got it into his head that the best way to learn other people's stories and histories of other people's stories and of great adventures is to become one himself. So one of those adventures that came floating through was a wizard who, in return for giving him a written version of his story for him, he basically transcribed and listened to this wizard over several weeks. He created Gatesell, said, "Go forth to the Radiant Citadel. You'll find all sorts of cultures and peoples there, and you can find the histories and adventures to your heart's content." And so he stepped through into this wondrous weird city to document the multiverse.
Okay. Do you have a name for this wizard? Like what?
I do. Pollux Barrowman was the name of the wizard.
Okay. And so, just to make sure I'm hearing you right, so like the idea was just you were looking for ways to expand your knowledge, and this person who is perhaps a bit of a mentor, or
Yeah, I mean, this wizard was kind of like a deal in exchange for writing down his story and presenting it to him, because the wizard couldn't put two lines together to save his life, whereas Xenophon is good with words. He basically helped chronicle his own story to give to him, and in exchange for that, and the encouragement, well, why don't you go? Well, you're talking about going out and having adventures. Why go through this gate and have adventures? Do what you basically encourage him to get out the door of the monastery, as it were,
sure,
rather
sure.
than just sitting and listening to others, to basically become a hero himself and document those adventures.
Nice. Okay, great. And so you were basically just teleported
Straight to the Citadel. Yep.
okay. So I think, uh, yeah. So that I mean that certainly works. And you're from another place, so you wouldn't have known any of these other
Nope.
locations. And it sounds
No,
like
no, but I'm very curious about these other
sure,
locations,
sure, yeah.
stories they have. Yes.
Okay, great. So Can Than,
Mhm.
Can Than, for
Yes.
Nobilis's character.
Yes.
We had established that you were from. I've already lost the
Subsunco.
Sabsunco. That was where you're from. But let's talk a little bit more about how you were envisioning that they came to be at the Radiant Citadel.
I originally had him at cross purposes, but I had an idea for a way to kind of bring the characters together to start with.
Okay.
So I originally had him being having grown up orphaned and working at a soup kitchen type place, a charity,
Mhm.
um, and then not having a place to go when the charity was no longer needed. Um, but I'm morphing that in order to give him a really good reason to go to the Radiant Citadel. So he was taken in more by a restaurateur than a soup kitchen, and now that he's an adult and has learned his craft and has also learned how to fight in order to um, uh, 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 because there's dangerous things around.
Mhm.
Um, he's been sent to the Radiant Citadel to gather exotic ingredients from across the universe. There's all these people who bring all kinds of interesting things to the Radiant Citadel. And he was just like, all right, you know how to cook, you know what good ingredients look like, go buy them, here's some money. And so he's been shopping the entire Radiant Citadel looking for interesting things. His patron gave him a cart to use to carry the stuff back, and he's got some crates and barrels and bags and things. And then on his way back to make it to the um, uh, uh,
The Concord
Concord
Jewel.
Jewel before it leaves, it's scheduled to leave. It breaks down and he can't carry it all himself. And he just says, help, help, I need help. I need to get to the Concord Jewel before it leaves. And the for whatever reason, the rest of the players volunteer to help him carry this stuff onto the Concord Jewel.
So I like that certainly as a way to potentially have you all meet, but it would raise the question immediately though of why once you arrive at the Concord Jewel would it not be expected that you leave with the jewel and they all stay?
Everybody needs to eat.
Oh, okay.
And he'd
So,
say,
like to let me thank you by
yeah,
taking you to okay.
to the place where I work, and I'm sure that my my boss will repay you with an excellent meal.
I haven't been to one of these 15 places yet, so here's my opportunity to visit the first one. So
Mhm.
I'll jump on
Yeah.
board.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things that I had been thinking, but is certainly not something that needs to happen before the first adventure, is that you would eventually be introduced to one of the speakers for the ancestors, one of the leaders of the Radiant Citadel, and perhaps tasked as a group of freelancers to do a little bit of intelligence or work for them. But again, like maybe that's something that happens after you all kind of go on a more spontaneous little group outing and then decide to be more of a group.
Yeah. That it works out. It works out well, and
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean, obviously we haven't talked to David about his character yet, but I mean, just generally speaking, does everyone sort of feel like they can roll with the idea that sort of a spontaneous request for help granted, and everyone's got an evening free, so hey, let's go check out the Sapsumco night market.
Yeah. That sounds like a
Like
plan.
that.
Okay, cool. So on that basis, then you feel like you've got what you need there for Canthan?
Yeah, for now at least.
Is it Can or is it Canthan? Is it like first and last name or is it?
I think he. I think for with there's too many. Well, okay. I made the name by looking up the word vigilance in a dictionary.
Okay. Well, it could
And,
just be that his name is Canthan, and that is
right,
his name. And if you only say Can, you're saying half of his name, not
right.
as opposed to the idea that Can is his first name. Friends call me Can, etc.
No,
Right. So
his name is Canthan.
okay, Canthan. All right. Yeah. Great. Okay, so that's fun. and it means we're almost further along in answering some of these questions. So, but with that, before we move on to that, David, tell us a little about your character. Let's figure out if there are any questions that still need answering there.
Well, I'm going to say that I like the idea that Dianok is not from any of the connected places.
Okay.
They stumbled across one of the lost Concord Jewels, basically rode it to the Radiant Citadel, tumbled out, and watched as it disappeared. Actually,
Okay.
what do the Concord Jewels look like?
So,
Like-
they actually are all different, but they are all enormous crystalline structures that look basically like just a giant floating gemstone, and each of them is a different type of gemstone. But what happens is, as they dock, there is an interior to them that is just literally like there's seats and cargo space and like controls. And there are like pilots for them called Clevengers that are, which is a fun catch-22 joke. But in any case, there's pilots of them that basically control them. And one of the interesting little details about it is, as a security measure, any one of the 15 speakers for the ancestors can unilaterally declare that the Concord Jewels all just stop. Any one of them can make all of them stop. And that one has to be persuaded to start them again. Which obviously could potentially cause trouble, but the intention there is that no one is getting like ignored or steamrolled. Because every one of them has to have their needs met to some extent, or else they stop everything.
So for the controls, would there be like a some sort of like a map or basically a display of what's going on with the?
Well, I would think that there would probably be. Well, here, let me see if I can what it's got established here versus me just guessing or inventing. Concord Jewels. So, the Concord Jewels, controlling a Concord Jewel, there's a creature adjacent to the controls. Like, in theory, anyone can make an attempt to use them. It would be an Arcana check to do so. It doesn't really talk about, like, displays or maps, but the thing is, you almost don't need a map, because what these things do is they go to the Radiant Citadel, and then they come into dock, then they go back out to their little orbit space, and then they teleport to one location on the material plane, just there, and then they teleport back to the ethereal plane. They don't go lots of places, they go 2 places.
Okay.
Radiant Citadel and the one location in the material plane.
Well, part of the background is, there's a question that posed that could not answer, and it's like, and my thought is like, as Dianok was writing this jewel, they scribbled down something they saw on the controls, and like be like, this might give some clue as to where they came from.
Okay. I mean, we can establish that.
Yeah.
But so the key then would be, I'm perfectly, that works just fine. The idea that you happened across one of the lost ones, and in a mysterious way, you were investigating it, and it teleported you to the Radiant Citadel, and then left again without anybody else being able to figure out where it had come from. But the thing that we have to establish from there is what you know about, like, why are you not able to just answer the question where you came from?
Okay. Well, I imagine the plate, the place they came from was very isolated.
Okay.
Like perhaps instead of nearby human settlements, like I originally wrote. They happen to come across the body of a wizard with writings and use that to learn magic.
Well, so one of the things that's notable about these things is that they are connected to like civilizations, right? It's not just out in the random location in the middle of nowhere. And
Well-
so, well, okay, just give me a second. So what I'm saying is ordinarily these places land nearby some kind of a community, right? But the question would be if we think that perhaps the one that you are is like it is a civilization that is now so long gone that there's almost essentially nothing that remains of it, or do you think that somehow the Concord Jewel is malfunctioning and it showed up somewhere weird?
I think the Concord Jewel, basically, the place it would normally go has been buried,
Okay.
and the place in the backstory that I mentioned
Mm-hmm.
is the one emerging part of the
Well,
remnants.
for that matter, perhaps what you encountered is ancient ruins.
Well, I mean, the reason DNR had to go is because they investigated into what happened to be ancient ruins.
Okay. I mean, that's what I just said, right?
Well, okay. I mean, like, the exile is because intruded into what was.
Well, okay. So, but I mean that's why I was suggesting that. So okay.
Okay.
It sounded like you were saying that what I was saying isn't right when it sound, but then you kind of.
I think I misheard something. Then.
Okay, what I was suggesting is that the civilization that the Concord Jewel is connected to is ancient ruins, and so perhaps you were investigating ancient ruins. That's why you were exiled. And then when you went back there because you were obsessed or however you feel like you were drawn to it or compelled in whatever way that you feel like.
I mean,
that's what I was suggesting.
My thought is that as they were leaving after the punishment, they came across the jewel. And
okay, but what I'm saying is, why have ancient ruins that are not connected to anything and then randomly encounter a Concord Jewel that is theoretically tied to an ancient civilization? Why not have those be the same?
I mean, like because the ruins are almost entirely buried, where it tries to go, it's like it kind of, it's like it's trying to go to a particular location, but it keeps bouncing, and it can't get there, so it can't go back.
Okay. So I feel like we're saying the same thing, but saying it in a way that each of us is interpreting as a disagreement. What I'm saying is that the ancient ruins in question are the civilization that Concord Jewel is trying to go to. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's what I was trying to say. Okay, so what I was suggesting is, in alignment with what you already wrote, is your character found some ancient ruins, investigated them. That was a problem for your character's community. But then in returning to that place, you find the Concord Jewel.
Okay, it's that part that is a disconnect.
Okay, why?
Because like that specific spot is like, basically, since everybody knows, okay, Dianok is no longer allowed to be here.
Okay.
How would Dianok get back there?
Well, okay. I mean, I thought that what you were describing is being exiled for going to a place, and you're saying that you can't then go back to that place?
I can't return to the place to the place in the center of the of
Okay, so all right. I don't want to tell you what your character's backstory is. I'm offering things that seem to make sense to me as possible ways for it to work. But it sounds like what you're describing is that the Concord Jewel is in an unrelated place.
well, like the jewel is trying to get to the place, but it's like trying to teleport into solid rock.
Okay,
You
all right. So how about this? The place that you think of as the ruins, that you are not like that you're so I think what you have not described, you're maybe thinking of a very specific sort of image in your head that you haven't told anybody else, which is that these ruins are somehow within the community you already live in, but you're not allowed to go there.
basically the community is built. It's built in the same location as this ancient city.
Okay.
It's just that ancient city is about you know
It's
50
like
meters
Troy.
below the soil.
Okay, well, but
it's like
so,
it's-
but so how did you go to a place that you're not allowed to be?
It's
then?
like a tower or something that still jets out.
Okay. So
Okay, so it's kind of like the city of Rome. You have the Roman Forum. You're not allowed to go into the Forum, but you did.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at, and please don't take offense at this, but it seems like you've got a couple of details that you really want to be specifically true about this that I'm not necessarily understanding the importance of. Why is there a need for you to not be able to go back to the place that you were exiled from for going to?
I mean, I guess I don't see how it makes sense that they would allow Enoch to,
Okay, well, so
basically
this is
after a banishment.
okay, what I was envisioning is that you have your community, and then nearby there is a place that you're not supposed to go. And you went there, and then you were banished, but because it's just nearby, how would they stop you from going back there if you wanted to? Why would they? If you're banished, why do they care at that point? Like these are the pieces that I feel like I'm missing from what you're talking about.
Yeah, they treat it like a, I'm like, I basically, you have the village, and in the center is the place that
Okay.
you are not allowed to go.
All right. Well, so all right. How about this? The center part that is within where they're not allowed to go is only one piece of a very big ancient city. And the Concord Jewel is going to a different place in the ancient city, and that's where they find it. Like, I think ultimately all of this doesn't necessarily matter. I guess I was just trying to say the Concord Jewel goes to one place. It doesn't go somewhere else because that place is underground.
Well, and I'm saying and what I'm saying is like, it's supposed to go to that one place, but
Okay.
that place.
That's what I'm saying, though, is the specific way these work is they go to one place. They don't go somewhere else. So I'm fine with
Yeah.
saying that it goes to a place that's all right. You know what? We are making too big a deal of this detail.
I'd like to finish my description,
Okay.
just so I could say. So it's trying to go to point A, but that place is obstructed. So basically, as a magic glitch, it goes to random places around and just kind of blinks in and out, and did not happen to find it when it was somewhere reachable.
Okay.
And then investigate the thing, somehow
Well, so
activate the return sequence.
Do you want it to have been just a complete random coincidence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so in that case, though, why is it that you wanted your character to have been exiled for examining those ruins to begin with? I thought you wanted all that to be connected.
I mean, the exile is the reason for the event for reason for leaving.
Okay, but why did they do the thing that got them exiled?
Rampant curiosity. Just
Okay, okay. I was just trying to connect these details, but it sounds like you would rather them not be connected. That's okay.
okay.
Okay. All right. So, out of curiosity, you investigate. Wait, I don't mean to say that with a tone. I'm sorry. Because your character was curious about these ruins, they inspected them, but that is taboo in your community, and so they are. You were exiled. As part of your exile, you did what?
Basically, I was trying to find a new place to
Okay.
live.
And then by just complete coincidence, you stumble across the Concord Jewel, which is nearby, and that's the piece I'm missing.
A couple you know, a half day's travel away from someone who is less skilled at traveling through thick woodland.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sure.
And basically, it's like, oh, that wasn't there before. I'm going to check it out because obviously does not have as much of a.
Okay. Well, so so it sounds like your character really doesn't have any actual knowledge about these ruins or what this place was before. You just know it was the strange building you're not supposed to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so that helps explain at least why when you show up that they would be curious. Hey, you came from this mysterious lost Concord jewel. Where was that? Where was that from? And you can't really answer their questions because you don't know.
Yeah. And I happen to see something that I might eventually be able to decode, maybe.
Okay. Well, all right. So, I mean, is that something you want to be an arc for your character or not? Because it sounds like you're kind of just tossing it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm saying maybe as in no expectation of it being quick.
Okay.
Say what you want.
So I would like that to be something to pursue.
Okay. All right. Well,
Okay.
all right. So I'll work on that in the background, but I just sort of feel like you're really insistent on certain details of this without giving me the way to connect them. But I'll that's okay. That's on me. I can figure that out. Okay. So
Sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. We want this character. This is your character. I don't want to be telling you what your character's backstory is. I'm just trying to help embed it in the larger reality of the setting. So that's sometimes where it's a little tricky, but I think we got there. So let's not worry too much about it. It's fine. So the question then is: we've established Canthan's cart breaks down. Asks for help. Has everybody how long do you think everyone has been there before you hear this young man asking for help? Are you all brand new in town?
I think Flounce is.
Mm-hmm.
She might have been there for like a couple of hours, maybe.
Okay. I mean, I think in some respects so I don't want to tell anybody how their character would feel, but to some extent, one of the nice things about this as a possible way to introduce each other is that it establishes right from the very first decision being made by the characters that they are the sort of person who would help someone on the street.
Mm-hmm.
I think DNR has been there a couple days.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks for Xenophon. He's
Okay.
got a sense of what the Citadel is. He's wandered around it, but he hasn't yet gone into one of these conveyances.
Mhm.
Now here's a perfect opportunity to do so. So he's going to jump in with both feet.
All right.
Oh,
Not
The
going what he finds.
back on the map, the House of Exiles, or is the place where refugees, the Palace of Exile.
So the Palace of Exile is the place where refugees can stay.
Right.
The
So
Passage of Respite is where the Concord Jewels dock.
right. So how about if he's going past the Palace of Exile when this breaks down, which is a natural place for people who are new in town, have
Well-
found themselves here or kind of got lost to be
Well,
located. So if that's
For
where
that matter, it is on the way from where the trade discal where your
Right.
shopping would have been
Right.
back to the Passage of Respite where the Concord Jewels dock.
exactly what I was getting at. Yeah.
Nicely convenient.
Okay. So here's the question then, I think, before we're about ready to kind of begin here is, would you like to go ahead and hand wave everything right up to getting on board the Concord Jewel and then start in the adventure, or do we want to role play a little bit this helping out scene?
I'm content with starting as we arrive at the Concord Jewel, and and Canthan, you know, relievedly, with
Repeatedly,
relief,
With
yes.
relief, yeah.
collapses into a seat and says, "Oh, by the way, my name's Canthan. Thanks you all, and offers to company into the to Siab Sankai Sanko, and my boss will give you a meal for helping me, and then just go around with introductions at that point. I'm happy with that, but if there's some business to do along the way, I'm open to starting it earlier than that.
Nope, that sounds good to me.
How big are these conveyances and how many people can fit in them?
I mean, they're pretty big. They are. Let's see. Where's it say this? Each Concord Jewel, a cylindrical core holds containers for goods, including livestock. Each jewel is a building-sized vessel capable of holding hundreds of people and tons of goods.
Okay, so
Okay,
there's
so
going to be
plenty
no
of room.
crowding. Got it.
Well, there might be if there's something going on that lots of people want to travel
Right.
with, but
But we're not all
Um,
kind of crammed into a space before.
Honest, any container that can hold livestock is going to be a big container.
Well, so the thing then that I will suggest is that we are going to pick up with our characters here. It is a day like many others on the Radiant Citadel. The weather is ominous, blank mist surrounding entirely this location where, towering above you, the enormous diamond is glowing a sort of teal color today. It has been this color for the better part of a week, and it illuminates the mists around. You can see up above the city, you can see some of the other Concord gems sort of doing their orbits. I think it's around the far side of the auroral diamond at present, but if you kind of peer through the mists, there's a little bit of a glimpse of the ominous shadow of that cyclone. But you are together, traveling, getting this cart. So was it what kind of cart is this? Is it like
it was a hand cart, with just two wheels and a platform and maybe sides. It's not a
Wheelbarrow?
bigger than a wheelbarrow, smaller than a horse cart.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did we abandon the cart and just pick up?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the wheels just completely fell
Okay.
apart. It was, and it would, faced with the choice of getting his cargo there late because, the schedule for these Concord Jewels is not every 15 minutes.
Mhm.
Or, somehow getting the cart put back together. He chose to enlist help to get the cargo back, and he'll worry about replacing the hand cart another day.
Sadly, I do not have mending as a spell, so I could not have helped fix
This
the
is,
cart.
I'm thinking this is beyond just mending.
Just
This is
mending.
like the hub of the wheel just kind of broke out of the spokes
Oh.
altogether.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps at some future time I will have a spell that could give allow all of it to be retrieved without an issue. But not as of yet.
Yeah.
I'm just glad we were able to get everything on board before it left. I was at the market a little too long, lost track of time. But
I wonder
and
how one actually keeps track of time in this place.
well, yeah, that was the big problem for me. They said, "Oh, come back at 4 bells," and I heard bells, but I don't know what the 4th bell sounds like. It was
Whereas I find this place very reminiscent of home. You have a featureless sky, except for that strange storm. The diamond's different and new. No sun, nothing like that. It feels a lot like the monastery. So having an internal sense of time and rhythm is important.
Oh, I'd love to learn how that works.
It is a discipline, can then.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that, but how would you even start to learn to keep track of time inside your own head? You start to learn to cook by learning to cut ingredients, and then you start learning to saute, and then you might learn to boil, and there's different techniques that you learn, and you start with the simple things and then you start putting them together. But there's fundamentals that you start with. I can't imagine what the fundamental thing to learn for keeping track of time.
There are fundamental rhythms to your. I've never seen one of your species before, but there are fundamental rhythms of heart, of breathing that you can learn to internalize and count.
Huh.
Listen to your body. Your body will tell you. Your
Okay.
body knows time better than you.
So like I need to be back in time for the Concord. So when I start to feel hungry, I'll know it's time to go. Kind of like that.
A little more sophisticated and a little
But
more
that's like the
patterned.
fundamental. That's like the first one. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think I can get. You said you're from a monastery.
Yes. Mount Athos Monastery. Yes.
Huh. And there's no sun there, just like this place.
Have you heard of the Plane of Limbo?
What's a plane?
A plane is a material plane of existence, just like there's the ethereal plane outside, the material plane.
I thought we were just up in
Asgard.
the clouds somewhere.
No, we are
Oh, because
floating. We
we got
floating
into
in
the
ethereal
Concord
plane.
Jewel and we rose up into the air, and then
Mhm.
there was some clouds, and then we're opened up here. This is like up in the sky, right?
No, from what I understand, this is my first time on one of these, so this is going to be an interesting experience, which I'm going to have to document fully. This teleports to another plane of material of existence,
Okay.
another world.
Huh. Wow.
And I am from another world, but I know of no jewels that go to limbo. Limbo is formless chaos, save for those small areas which my people have turned into order and stability by force
Huh.
of will and want.
Oh, my name's Kenthan, by the way. What's yours?
I am Xenophon.
Xenophon. Pleased to meet you. And he bows in your direction.
So
Ah,
that seems like an excellent moment for perhaps each of you to describe what your character looks like.
Xenophon is a little unusually colored for a Githzerai. If anyone knows what a Githzerai should look like, his skin is more gray than green, but he has very little hair just around his pointed ears. He's wearing relatively straightforward robes. He has some pipes on his belt. He has a book and writing materials about average height for his species. Purple eyes.
Very nice.
Kanthan is moderately tall, human, brown hair, brown eyes, a swarthy complexion. He's wearing armor, but there's uh, uh, the axes on his belt are uh, uh, cleavers that you would use in cooking. Um, and he's uh, I've been trying to think of some details that kind of make him a little more interesting. His hair is close cropped. He's clean shaven, um, and uh, he's he's got a ribbon tied to his arm with brightly colored inscription on it, and it just has the name of the inn where he works. Um, um,
Right.
he, how about you guys? And he
Yeah.
So,
gestures to the rest.
You know,
Yeah.
so you got it.
Okay. Well, there's a thump right at your feet, barely missing your toes, where a massive barrel of something that you had in the bottom of your cart just kind of plops down, and small, fluffy form bounces on top of it. This is and says, "Hi, my name is Flounce. Um, I'm from the Feywilds, which is a completely different direction from where he's from."
quite.
And she points
Xenophon?
at Xenophon and points in the completely other direction, and then just starts trying to figure out where in the world she's supposed to be pointing. Um, she is a small golden brown Harangon. So she is a bunny. She is a small bunny with small ears. Um, so her token doesn't actually do her justice for the fluff. She's wearing heavy armor. She has a 6-foot glaive strapped to her back, a long sword strapped to her waist. She's almost 3 feet tall. She's about the size of a halfling, really. Um, and uh, and she's just fairly cheerful of the, it's like, I'm really interested in tasting your food.
Tell me, Flounce, is it common for your people to name yourself after verbs? I
Oh
find
no,
that very unusual.
This is a nickname.
And is your name, you're from the Feywild, is your true name secret then, and you wish to hold it for protecting yourself?
That is correct.
Xenophon will nod.
So you see Exo, he seems to tilt his head a little bit, almost as if he's hearing something. And then he mumbles something like, "Are you sure? You're all so different." And he walks over and he from foot to head, he's about 6 feet tall, 6 foot, just over 6 feet tall. But if you go with the ears, he's actually almost 7 feet tall. And he's a very, like a very sickly white. And he's wearing simple leather armor. And he seems a bit off, almost. It's almost as if when he gets near you, it's colder. Like there's a chill about him. And before he speaks to you again, he kind of tilts his head again and he's like, I was informed that I would be of assistance to someone.
Who informed you? And what name can we call you by?
My name is Ixel, and
Ixel.
my friend told me that someone would need my help. I didn't know who, but it was almost fortuitous that I found you in the cart. You all are so different from those I'm normally around. The gate wardens are a rather uniform group of people.
I am pleased to meet you, Ixel.
It's nice to meet you all too. I hope that I can be of more of assistance.
I'm Dianok. And Dianok is an elf with a lot of fairly short, but also pretty wild brown hair, blue eyes, kind of bronze skin, robes that are fairly simple. They're, got a little bit of a flare type thing on the chest. If you, if you ask what it means, it's more just it's someone from the palace gave it to me. But important thing you'll notice is that Dianok is missing both middle fingers on both hands, and on the right wrist is basically a kind of a bangle bracelet with finger bones that have minuscule writing on them. This is not my first time on one of these things, even though I was the only one on it, and I think something was malfunctioning with it because I didn't. It went away after I got here.
That is not the way I understand these conveyances operate.
Yes.
And Flounce will hold out her hands and say, "Can I look at your bracelets?"
Oh. Okay. Be careful though. It's my spell record, my spell book.
Yeah, she'll flick one of the earrings in her ears and say, "Yes, I have some too." And so she'll look and like, this isn't a script I'm familiar with.
It's my own way of getting recording and preparing my spells.
You invented your own language?
It's if I understand it correctly, it's more of a shorthand, to harness arcane energies, you have to shape it into a script, and every or every wizard script is different.
Well, quite.
To actually record these, I had to interpret it from the book I had found, and that's even more of a struggle when there's nobody else that understands the arcane around.
But why write on bone?
because it's important to me.
Is that
I
the custom?
mean,
Is that the custom of your people to record important events and things on bone?
Because it these are significant, and I takes one and just kind of holds it up to where it basically fits perfectly in the missing spot.
And then the eye, then the purple eyes widened, and he's like, Xenophon buys the vowel.
It's a reminder of what of what has happened in the past, not to be forgotten.
I am sorry. I'm sorry if your trauma has. Speaking of your trauma, injures you.
I must I must accept it as fact, for it is true.
That is a very solid philosophy. Truth is important to me. Recording the true nature of events is important to me. That's why I'm here to witness, to record, and to participate in great events.
Well, perhaps eventually I might tell you my events. But
I would be honored to hear your story. I've heard many stories when I was at the monastery, adventurers passing through on their way to or from the endless void and chaos. And now I'm going to take the opportunity to make some adventures of my own,
very good.
such as this wondrous conveyance to this land that our friend Kanthan is from.
Yeah. So as you look up at the approaching Concord gem, the one that goes to Sabsumko is an enormous ruby that is a brilliant red. Seems to glow with its own red color, even in the teal light currently being given off by the auroral gem. It is almost sea urchin in its exterior shape. Sea urchin like, meaning spherical, but with lots of little spiny protrusions, but all brilliant ruby red. And it sort of glides on in unerringly, confidently, simply, smoothly into position at the Passage of Respite. And there are gangplanks extended, ramps loaded to allow both passengers and cargo to climb on board. And to be sure, despite the strange appearance of the exterior, once you get inside, it's pretty straightforward. It's a big area where cargo can be stored, and there are also passenger seats where you can sit comfortably and take your positions. I think it is not a terribly busy period right now, so there is plenty of room for you to all get seats next to each other. I misspoke earlier. The name of the Concord Jewel pilots is Clavigers, not Clevengers. So it's probably not a catch-22 joke in that sense then. It struck me as like I wasn't sure why that would be a joke anyway, but whatever. So in any case, the Claviger has, is supervising as everyone gets on board. It seems clear that they come and go semi-regularly, and so as a result, they don't wait around if you're not on board on time.
that's right. That's what I was told.
This is
So
a
let's get on.
this,
And yeah, if you wanna come with me, I'm sure my boss will thank you for your help by giving you a wonderful meal.
this is a much nicer interior than the last one, or than the one I was on before.
What was wrong with that one?
Uh, it was abandoned, I think.
Abandoned.
It
Do they
yeah,
abandon them? I mean,
No,
why would
not.
somebody abandon something as amazing as this?
I think it was lost, it uh, the arcane flow, the power flow of the arcane transfer was not something I would consider proper. So it looked like something was wrong with it, and given that I don't think anybody knows where I came from, kind of means that uh, it was a lost one. I don't
Not
know.
one, not
Some
one of the
kind of luck.
15. Interesting.
Exil's like, it would seem to be very difficult to lose something this big.
Yeah, I'm
Maybe.
Where are, you didn't say where are you from?
I have said the name to others, and it's not, and they didn't recognize it. I don't think any of you would either.
I'll suggest that probably after you presented yourself at the Passage of Respite, there are certainly guards there that are making sure that you don't just have a bunch of enemy soldiers just pouring out of one of these things. But when you presented yourself there, and they were certainly aware that it was not one of the regular ones, I think you were probably taken to talk to the speakers, to the ancestors. But as we kind of discussed, it sounds like ultimately, although they were interested and you were told that you were welcome to remain in the Radiant Citadel, they were a little bit disappointed that you were not able to give them more that they were able to work with, but they were nonetheless extraordinarily excited by the appearance of that lost Concord gem in the first place. So even though you didn't have all the answers they wanted, they were nonetheless happy that everything had happened.
Yeah, and I might come up with a name eventually, but it's painful to think about it for them right now. So
Sure. Just to clarify, I don't know that if we had said that you do want Dianok to have they them pronouns. Is that correct?
yes, they them.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think with everybody aboard, there are no seatbelts or restraints or anything, but you find that they do not appear to be necessary because once the doors close and you are enveloped, there's a light ruby glow inside, and you barely feel the motion at all as the Concord gem, rises away from the Passage of Respite. You would know only from having seen it from outside that it rises up to a distance of about 600 feet or so, and then just vanishes. And what you experience is just a little bit of an arcane blip, and then you feel that you are once again descending.
So that's what it feels like when it's proper.
I've witnessed them coming and going, but never ridden in one previous to this. I do wonder why rise to 600 feet exactly and then teleport. Why not do it on the ground? Why not higher or lower?
And then Diana kind of just starts pouring out an arcane explanation that you probably doesn't make much sense to the rest of you, but
Try me.
well, I don't have it. I don't have something prepared.
Sure.
no,
They're
no, no. The
telling
point, yeah.
Well, I think probably a lot of it would be along the lines of using a lot of words to essentially say that's the safe distance.
Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to find the specific location here. Got a couple of things that I'm looking through as you get ready to move into. I this is I keep knowing that I've read something and then struggling to find the where it says that thing that I read. So I think you know what? I'll just we're good here. Let me move this along as you are landing. Where does it say this? So, I'm sorry. Like I'm trying to find the place where it lands because there's a specific like each location the Concord gem lands in a nearby, but it's near enough that let me briefly just show that as you are sailing in on the Concord gem, it does briefly have a sort of transparent window open that you're allowed to, you're able to look down through. And I put you all on the Samsung Co. larger map here for the moment. And you're able to look down and see a lot of this, um, stretching out below you. But it is currently here in Samsung Co. It is getting towards dusk, which is good because that is the perfect time to visit the night market. And in particular, as you arrive, as this the Concord gem settles down onto the ground, and you're able to begin unloading. You look out, and as the sun dips below the horizon, the Din Sing night market twinkles to life, gradually igniting in a dazzling display. The smells of food carts filled with pot stickers, coconut desserts, spiced meats, sticky buns, and more drift amid bright bouquets of glowing flowers and magical lights in the shapes of vendors' wares and whimsical mascots. Crowds of shoppers wander the stalls, drawn by the colors, smells, and music. And so here's where we'll go ahead and put you on the night market map. But here's where we're going to have a few more questions for Canthan, because you are from here. So,
Yeah.
so some of the questions that we might be curious about is, we established like you are working for a restaurateur here, but do you have the name of the place?
Um,
Well, so here's the question: is the restaurant in the night market?
no, it's nearby, but outside it. It's an inn, a place where people can stay. It's but also has food and all, and it's not a night spot. It's people who go to that place want quiet, so it's like, you know, far enough away from the night market that the noise and bustle of the night market doesn't bother people there.
Okay, so perhaps what I'll suggest here is that since you're obviously going there to, well, so you know what? Maybe I shouldn't presume. Here's the issue: you're going to basically need to be walking past/through the night market to get to where you're supposed to deliver
Okay.
all of this stuff.
Okay,
And
it's
so
it's along the way. Yeah.
So I would imagine, just from the perspective of people visiting a new and exciting place, is that at this time of day, you're passing through this glorious, lit up, busy, exciting location, as I mentioned, and there's a little bit of passing through it and then kind of reaching the outer perimeter of it and looking out into what is, comparatively speaking, a dark and
Darkness.
deserted neighborhood that's less exciting.
Yes. Yeah. And what I have in mind is that we drop off the cargo, and my boss says, "Oh, our kitchen's closed for the night. Take him over to the night market. You'll get it. Here's a few silvers. That'll be fine."
Okay. So perhaps then, what the next question would be is, how familiar is Kent then with the night market? Like, does he go there all the time? He knows the regulars and that sort of thing, or what?
He's he goes there whenever he can get free time away from work, which is not terribly often,
Mm-hmm.
but once every 2 or 3 weeks he can get away. Um, and and uh, um, and yeah, he's got a few people he knows, um, but doesn't have any strong relationships yet.
Okay. Okay. So you've kind of explored a little bit, but not so much in terms of like making real connections with people or.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's not a tremendously outgoing
Mm,
person. So he's um, been kind of standoffish
okay.
a little, and uh, kind of actually looking forward to being in a group that can um, makes him feel a little more confident knowing that he's got people around him.
Sure.
So
Sure. So one last question about that, especially coming from a restaurant that is not part of the night market. One of the biggest features of the night market is all of the different food trucks and food
yeah.
carts. So I guess what's your feeling about those? How does Kenthan feel about those versus the more traditional
Well,
type of restaurant?
his boss has always been, oh, that stuff is snacks. It's it's not serious food. It's not going to really, it's not good for you to eat all the time. It's for special occasions. What he offers is hearty fare for travelers and wagon drivers and people who need, people who are work for a living,
Mm-hmm.
not just, entertainers.
Sure.
And he's always been kind of disparaging of the food at the night market as being too frou-free, too much all presentation and no heart.
Mm-hmm.
And that has made Kanthan tremendously curious
Okay.
about it, because that's nothing like what he has made at home. And in fact, this whole deal with the exotic ingredients it was actually Kenthan's idea to kind of combine the nutritious, the hearty basicness of his boss's food with something more interesting. But
Okay. So, would you know the place well enough to like walk them around and give them a tour? Is that how this plays
yeah, I
out?
think so. I think so. He'd know enough to say, okay,
Okay.
here's my favorite place.
All right. So
Um,
what I'll say then is that this place changes frequently. So there's a lot of turnover in terms of the different stuff that's available and where it is and all of that. But there are certainly regulars, right?
yeah,
Who've been there for a long time. And so I'll go down sort of a list of some of the more prominent ones. And I have a little bit that I'll read you the high level for each, and then feel free to
mhm,
add color commentary as you
yeah.
see fit. So I will reveal them on the map as well. Uh, so first is Madame Culp's Silk, is a location. There we go. This is a store that sells luxurious silk garments for no less than 50 gold apiece. So, like,
Yeah,
really nice, really fancy silk.
way beyond Kenthan's budget.
I think what you also have a vague sense of, but maybe don't know the details, is that this is one of the places that participates in the market games, which is something that you've probably always been a little curious about, but maybe never gotten to actually participate in.
Yeah, like my time off has never coincided.
Right, right, right. So then there's also the Spicy Brothers, which is this stall sells spices, peppers, and spicy dishes like cucumber fire smoothies and honey glazed hot chips for 5 silver each.
Yeah, he's so do you guys like spicy food?
I am used to lentils, rice, and barley.
Ooh, well, then I have an experience for you you've probably never had before. And I'm going to go over and buy some and share them around to everybody. Uh, and, uh, and, um, uh, and yeah, I'll also like have some coconut milk candy.
Sure, sure. Well, so does everybody try some?
Oh yeah.
Xenophon has to
this
have this
the
experience.
is this the hot chips? Is that what you
Oh,
got?
dear
Yeah, the hot chips.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some this, yeah,
Okay.
hot chips.
Well, I think what we need, obviously, then, is for our first rolls to be a Constitution saving throw for everybody to see
Oh,
how
dear.
how well you handle this spicy food.
Oh,
Now,
boy.
obviously, this is
Yeah.
yeah,
Diana got a 9.
a 9. Yeah, I think it is. Well, I will allow. How about this? I'm not going to describe anything. You guys just use your own result to sort of guide and describe how your character reacts to these hot chips.
I would like
Uh,
to say that Kenthan is used to this, so I would like advantage on the throw.
Uh, I'm going to say no,
Okay.
but feel free to flavor your result
I
appropriately.
got a natural 20.
Well, there you go. The only reason I was going to say no is that there is actually stuff later that deals
Okay.
with eating spicy food, and
Okay, okay.
I wouldn't want to give you mechanical advantage.
Well,
in that right there.
yeah, Kenthan just eats the first one kind of as it's like, oh yeah, these are great, and just takes 2 of them, pops them in his mouth, and just chomps down. He speaks grin, and just one drop of sweat appears on his forehead and runs down his
Mhm.
cheek.
Diana, yeah, encouraged by this, even though it's really odd. I takes it, chews. No, no.
I'm definitely not trying to poison you. Hands you a cup of coconut milk.
Yeah.
You-
Where are we, inside or outside?
It's outside. These are all
yeah,
like
we're-
tents and carts, and so basically there are lots of like colorful lights hung up on strings and streamers and everything. But you're otherwise beneath the night sky.
Okay. I was gonna say, you have never seen a rabbit with a glaive on their back bounce that high, run around in 3 or 4 circles and steal Dianok's coconut milk.
Do that, and also Diana pulls out one and just kind of taps her tongue and prestidigitates the taste away.
You see,
And offers to do the same for Flounce.
Flounce sticks out her tongue eagerly.
Yeah.
you see Exel. He takes it and he looks at it, and then he eats it, and then you see a shiver run from his feet all the way up his person as his fur fluffs up and then smooths back down, and it goes all the way through his ears, and then finally he just goes, "That was tasty."
Finally, Xenophon stares at the chip, studies the chip, looks at the chip, might write a monograph on the chip, and finally eats the chip. His skin goes from gray to greenish and reaches in the direction of someone to give him some coconut milk. But he's trying not to say a word about this, but there's more sweat coming off of him than is possibly physically possible in his body.
hands the milk and then offers to do the prestidigitation.
He waves off the prestidigitation, just drinks the milk and takes it back and gives it back gratefully.
Nice. So
Would not be fair to remove it from the tongue once tasted.
So as you're continuing to make your way, around the ring here, there's also Zungoon Family Seafood, which is a food vendor that sells fish cakes, fresh whaling slug, diamond-throated carp, and shimmering vampire fish for 1 gold apiece. And then there's Yes, sir. Go ahead.
That's something that just fascinates Dianok because you know more familiar with fish than with spicy foods.
I don't have enough money to buy something from every one of these carts for you, but if you see something you like, let me know.
Yeah.
Perhaps
So,
something not so spicy.
well, plenty more to see too. I think you're in these circles, and like all of these little tents, you should understand, are coming with a variety of merchants who are clamoring for your attention or not, as their own particular style would dictate. But certainly, it is a very busy atmosphere here.
Canthan is human, or how many? What is the preponderance of people here human, or what
Oh,
is the
well, that
preponderance of
is
people
a
here?
very good question. Um,
The historian wants to
yeah,
know.
well, as you look around and see for yourself the people who live here, um, uh, Sabsunko is a cosmopolitan area inhabited mainly by humans with dark, wavy to curly hair, brown eyes, and skin tones ranging from medium tan to deep brown. Alongside humans, dragonborn, gnomes, kobolds, and orcs number among the land's most populous residents, but there are also, here and there individuals of all manner of different races. So that is the mix that you see around you.
But really, none of us look that odd in this place.
Not really, especially when I mean, the places that connect to the Radiant Citadel sort of inherently are going to have a slightly more cosmopolitan place, just because they have that access. Not necessarily exclusively, but certainly this place does. But as you continue along, there is Vaz Lucky amulets rather, where this shop hawks a mixture of charms and curios, the most popular being Monkey's Bane charms and Owl's Wing rings, both of which are said to fend off sickness and animal attacks. And they cost varying prices between 2 to 20 copper pieces.
2 to 20 copper, you said?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then there's Veda's otherworldly goods. So basically, depending on like if you wanted something, you would I would tell you what it costs specifically, but that was the range. So Veda's otherworldly goods. This shop sells pastries and desserts for 1 silver piece each. The signature vanilla bun is made from a secret family recipe and sells for 2 gold pieces.
Oh,
How big is it? How
I
big
I
is the bun?
I think it's like it's like Cinnabon size, like it's a big vanilla bun. Yeah. And then last but not least here, Tianmo noodles, which is this food vendor offers vegetarian noodle bowls made with handmade noodles and fresh green tree beans for 1 gold piece.
I will try that.
that sounds a lot more
Hey.
like something I'm used to. So I'm going to spend the money for that for sure.
Yes, I am definitely going to spend the money for that.
I think
Yeah,
Dianok
it looks like we found dinner.
Yeah.
Dianok will go for some of the noodles and be like, does anyone want to split that large bun, one of those large buns with me? Perhaps we could go in by quarters or fifths.
Sure, let's split one up. I'll pay for half of that.
Oh, okay.
We can all have a taste.
All right.
The big bun was what you said, 2 gold?
Yeah.
Or 1?
The vanilla bun is 2 gold pieces.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's enough there for all of us to have it taste.
Yeah. So I think you get one of those, and you're making your way back towards the noodles to get all your noodle stand, or maybe you've gotten them and you're all kind of standing nearby, holding the noodles and eating standing up because there's definitely no seats available.
Yeah.
But as you are there, eating your noodles, shouting rises over the sounds of haggling shoppers and the sizzle of cooking street food. A shrill voice cries out, "Give it back, you little thief!" And then you hear, "No, you're the thief," replies a youngster with a panicked squeak. An instant later, a frantic kobold bursts from the crowd, clutching a sizable bunch of green onions. A flustered gnome woman chases him, and I have a handout for you. All right. And showing it here on screen, got a kobold youth has seized some green onions from this stand and is running away.
Is he running in anywhere close to me? Because thieves stealing food is something that I was dealing with a lot at my home. That's one of the things I was supposed to stop, and I feel like I ought to stop this thief.
Sure, sure.
I mean, it's just onions, but nevertheless,
Mm-hmm.
you can't just let somebody come do that. So is it anywhere near me that I could reach out and try and grab this person as they
Sure,
go by?
sure. I think, in fact, actually, he is not merely running in a direction near you, but he has actually just collided with Xenophon, bounced off of them, and falling to the ground. And just a moment later, this gnome woman catches up, and she is now attempting to grab the green onions back from the kobold, and she is shouting at him, and they are each accusing the other of stealing the onions.
Clearly we can come to some peaceful resolution to this problem.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check.
All right.
Well, one of them was running away. That's usually the thief.
Trying to steal it back.
That is a 22.
Wow.
That's pretty good. I think so. Describe, I guess, a little bit more what this 22 actually looks like for these two that are screaming at each other and tugging for with the scallions.
So you might have noticed Xenophon's cadence sometimes goes into rhythm or to meter, but now he starts speaking directly into iambic pentameter, trying to calm them down, speaking calming words and holding up to keep other people away and basically keep them from going apart. And finally, by the power of his voice, to get them to stop shouting, so as actually listen to him for a moment. He's got a rhythm, a cadence, as if he was reading epic poetry to them, just as a blank verse to basically focus on his voice and stop fighting, because he's just capturing their attention with the power of his words.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have. Let's see. I don't have a specific handout just for her, but so let me just keep that other handout up, just so we have our image here of these characters. So as they both kind of they stop fighting over each other, but like neither of them is willing to let go of the onions, but they've stopped shouting at each other. You have their attention. They're each unwilling to let go. But I think what happens first is that the gnome looks up at you and says, "This thief just stole onions from my cart. You see, he's caught red-handed." And the kobold says, "These onions were stolen from our cart just less than an hour ago. I'm just taking them back."
All right. Why don't you both give us the onions I'll look at my hands for the moment, and we can come to the truth and rightness of this matter and determine who is the true thief and who is speaking lies here. Let us speak reasonably and calmly and find out the source of this problem.
Mm-hmm. So I think that the strength of your initial persuasion has persuaded them for the moment to let you hold the onions while you negotiate this agreement or this disagreement. But I think the
I,
oh, go
I
ahead.
okay. While that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to kind of evaluate the tone and body language of the two, maybe insight checks,
Sure.
to kind of get an idea of the character of these
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah. So I think I think as they are explaining, and I- so I'll give you that in just a moment. So I think speaking more calmly now, the gnome woman looks up and at the group of you and just says, "I'm so glad all of you are interceding here because it's obvious that these onions were stolen. You all witnessed him running away from my shop with them. It's very obvious." And then he says, "But it was you and your people that stole them from our cart and knocked our cart over." And so, as you make your insight check, Kanthan, please tell me what you roll.
At a
Ooh,
20.
a 20. So, it would appear for this gnome that there is no ambiguity here. She feels indignant at this accusation. She does not seem to have any element of like a guilty conscience that she seems to have. However, you believe that the kobold also, at the very least, believes what he is saying is true. He
Why
thinks
would
they did do it, and he's not lying about that.
why would the kobold say you stole the onions?
I don't know. It's all but it's just part of the long-standing nonsense we've had to deal with from their family. And at this point, uh, at this point, another kobold has enters this whole uh, enters this whole conversation, and I have a handout for her. Hang on, let me find that. Sorry, there's so many things to move through here. Um, player art handout. There we go. So another kobold comes up. This kobold is, uh, as you can see here, she is a, you know, perhaps middle-aged female kobold dressed in a very fancy dress. She a lot of it is sort of nautically and fish themed, um, and she comes up and she sees the kobold and the gnome fighting, and she just as they had just about to get back into like squabbling, she angrily chastises the gnome and says, "That's enough, Lama. You're behaving no better than our parents did, stealing from me and attacking my son." And then they're all just arguing now again.
Kenthan
I'll
just
turn.
kind of looks around
Yeah.
helplessly because
I'll
Yeah.
turn to Canthan. Is this a long-standing disagreement
have
in the
I
market?
heard of
Yeah.
this feud
So
before?
I think as you're
Let me make a history
go ahead,
check.
yeah, make a history check.
Natural 20, second
Wow.
roll of
Okay.
the
Wow.
night.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everybody knows that the Tianmo family and the Zungoon family, who run the Zungoon seafood shop and the Tianmo noodles respectively, had a long-standing feud for generations. However, they had more recently made peace, like in the last last generation or so. Like it's still tense, but it had not been open hostility for a while. So you know that, but I think even as you're just having that conversation, the arguing kobold woman notices you and turns from her son and the irate gnome shopkeeper, and she says, You strangers look like capable sorts. I'm Kusa Zungoon, proprietor of market-famous Zungoon family seafood. For a fish typhoon, you'll wish for Zungoon. Help us deal with this scoundrel, and I'll make it worth your while. Scoundrel! The gnome shouts, turning your way. You don't look like you're wrapped up in market politics. I am Lamai Tianmo. Help me figure out what's going on here, and I'll give you a lifetime supply of delicious noodles from Tianmo Noodles. You clearly see how tasty they are already, I can tell. And then they start quarreling with each other now about who is giving the better offer to help them.
I, I,
So I think it appears that the cart being knocked over started this, at least today. Perhaps we should go investigate that.
So they are in their arguments with each other now, increasing their offers to include a gold price as well. But they're still arguing amongst themselves.
Exo goes, my friend says it might behoove us to let them negotiate for us as they are continuing to do so.
well,
we should get to the truth of the matter, not to the one that pays us the most money.
You see Ixel's ears kind of cock for a second, and he goes, as long as it gets to the truth, regardless of how much we get out of it, is all that matters, right?
I am a simple and straightforward and austere person. I don't need endless reams of gold. But I do not wish the truth to be obscured by the money offered to us, if that makes sense.
Oh,
I'm fine with receiving whichever offer we can, especially if if it can get things that we need.
So
need.
yeah, so at this point they realize you're kind of talking about the kind of question of like prices, and so Kusa Zungoon, this kobold woman, turns to you and says, "Listen, if you investigate this and come back to me with proof that she is vandalizing our cart and she is causing trouble, breaking the truce agreement that we had come to, I will offer you not only a lifetime supply of free meals, but also 50 gold pieces." And then the gnome Lamai Tayunmo says, "I will give you a lifetime supply of Tayunmo noodles and 60 gold pieces if you prove that they are lying to try to soil our reputation. It is them that are trying to break the truce."
And if we prove that it is a third party that is responsible,
they together say, "It's not, it's them."
All right.
well,
Let's go see. Let's go see what we can see.
I think Kusa at this point folds her arms and just says, "I would be satisfied if you had proof of a third party. However, I am certain that if you investigate properly, you will discover the truth, which is that they are the ones. I'll give you 60 gold also. 65.
no.
65.
All right. Let's leave it at 65 so that we're not, attempting to buy the decision, that you're certainly not trying to influence what we would discover and what we would decide based on how much money you'll pay us. You certainly don't want that.
They once again simultaneously they both look shocked and offended at the suggestion.
Right.
course
So
not.
let's just leave it at 65 so that there's no question as to an auction going on. And let's look at what's been going on. Now, so we're here at the noodle cart, so let's start here. The name of the kobold woman who is
Kusa.
Kusa Zungoon.
Kusa Zungoon. We will come and visit you in a bit once we've looked around here and talk to you about what happened. And but we would like to speak to our with on this side first.
The kobold
Because
youth,
we're already here.
yeah, the kobold youth says, "What about the onions?"
Are they
How
still
about-
holding on to the onions?
No,
I'm
Z-
holding the
no,
onions.
no.
Xenophon is holding the onions presently.
Okay.
Exel goes.
We'll
"Why
decide
not?"
the fate of the onions as well.
Well, Exel just goes, why not for the time being, or to solve the onion conundrum, split them between the two?
A very sensible solution, Axel.
Hold him up,
I
Xenophon.
will. What's that?
Hold him up.
I will hold him up,
Pull out my axe. Just right through the middle.
and I will solemnly present
The onions to each of
Actually,
them.
when you do that, the arc will say, perhaps, and Mage Hand will float and take hold of the that way no one can get injured.
Well, it sounds like they're already chopped.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
In the future, though.
Yeah.
So I think they both grumble, but seem to be generally accepting of this proposal, and they both sort of retreat to their own respective corners / stalls, so to speak. I think at this point, though, you're a little ways away from the Thai noodle shop, and Lamai has gone back to that. But I think at the moment, there's another man who kind of approaches, and I think with your sort of general, knowledge of some of the vendors, you recognize that this is one of the Spicy Brothers. Maybe you remember which one, maybe not. They're actually twins, so maybe not. But he just catches you briefly separated from both of those and just says, "My friends, it is certainly a shame when families can't get along, but it would be my suggestion that you not embroil yourself in local politics unless you wish to find yourselves is perhaps biting off a bit more than you can chew. This is something that's been brewing for generations. I doubt it will be solved in a night."
Well, our attention was requested. If they had not invited us to meddle, I would not interfere. It's their affair. But they asked for our help. How can I say no?
Well, that is all, of course, up to you. I was about to offer a tour around. You all seem to be well, I feel like I've seen you before.
I've been around. I don't get here as much as I would like, but
Well, then I would hope that you would know. But I've said my piece. I hope that you will not come to regret getting involved. But it is.
Do you
Do I-
know anything that happened about what happened today regarding their cart or?
Well, I'm sure I don't know, but the two families have been squabbling, fighting for generations. There was a brief peace, but everyone knew that it was only a matter of time before the fighting would start again. The two have been trying to ruin each other for decades.
Does he really not know?
You can make a wisdom check or an insight check if you like.
22.
Okay. You do get a sense that he may have some other reason for not wanting you to get involved. He is trying to keep you from getting involved in a market politics, and might have some other reason that he's not saying.
Do you, uh, do you not want strangers involved in this for a reason, or is it the fact that we're strangers?
Look, I should have followed my own advice and not stepped into the middle of this thing. I think I just, as someone who represents one of the vendors here at the night market, I just wanted newcomers to have a delightful time instead of getting embroiled in the muck. But do as you like, and he leaves.
Mhm.
Something I said?
Well, then let's go.
Politics are a multivalent, clearly.
Yeah.
Well, let's go
Well-
see what we can see here at the noodle card.
Yeah, I would like to know where where they got the onions that the Zungoons said were stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And
So-
when?
Well,
Yeah.
I think all of these are excellent questions that perhaps we will discover the answers to next time.
Oh,
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess how do
No,
you all feel? Would you like to? I mean, because we've only just begun the adventure.
we've
as
only
you can-
just
Yeah.
begun.
yeah.
Yeah,
But so I feel like this is a kind of a good point.
This is a
but,
good stopping
It's
point.
a good stopping point.
So we will resume the Salted Legacy adventure here in Subgunko. Is that I want to make sure I'm saying it right. But we will resume this Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel adventure next week with more D&D adventure on so many levels.
So many
Levels.
Mm.